So we have created mechanisms for stopping exploitation in the state of Florida quickly without, having to do that 2 years of civil litigation by using this tool called the exploitation injunction statute. There's no filing fee. You don't have to have an attorney to file this.
Hello, friend. Welcome. If you are new here, my name is Carlene Cadet Francois from Florida Assisted Living Consulting. We help busy professionals convert buildings into thriving assisted living facilities and group homes throughout the state of Florida. We are also the hosts of the normally sold out Florida Assisted Living and Caregivers Conference. We are planning the 2026 conference, a 2-day conference. Exactly what you asked for. Click the link in the description to learn more. We also build communities, as we found that people lack resources, usually find themselves struggling, and they end up giving up. Inside of the Thriving Circle community, we meet monthly where we provide resources to you. You join me live and I answer your questions and give you step-by-steps of actionable things you need to do to move forward. Today, I'm here with an amazing guest. Before we get started, please consider to like, subscribe, and share this episode with someone that will find it valuable. Me and attorney Shannon started way before we hit recording, going over some interesting cases that she's working on, and I'm just so fascinated. Shannon M. Miller is a board-certified elder law attorney and founder of the Miller Elder Law Firm. With over 30 years of protecting Florida seniors, Shannon is passionate about helping families navigate complex issues like Medicaid, elder exploitation, and long-term care planning. She is also a certified yoga instructor, blending mindfulness with law to help caregivers and families approach these difficult topics with clarity and compassion. Oh my gosh, Shannon, I absolutely love this. Welcome to the show. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Shannon. I'm excited to be here. I love talking about senior issues, and I love talking about how we can do better with aging and dying. It's so hard out there. I think what I see a lot of more and more is people kind of enter this stage, whether you're dealing with your own health issues or you're a caregiver for a family member or a friend. Sometimes it's just being a good friend. And what we see is this real struggle because people are unprepared. They're not trained to be caregivers and help people through chronic illness and all of the terrible things that can come with our brains kind of declining. So yeah, I'm here to help and to do my best to inform your audience of how we can do better with that process.
That is so amazing. And I know I said that twice already. I just get really excited. I just get really excited. I mean, I was reading your bio, and of course, we met, and you're absolutely incredible. Like, your spirit is so good, and you just want to help people, and you can literally feel that. And to see how you put yourself out there, how you're like me, like literally, once I gained a family that I'm helping to achieve a dream, whether it's to open their ALF or to give them resources or to tell them the steps that they need to do, they become my family. And I literally think about them like I think about my children. And I see that in you. I see how you care for your client, and you have an impressive background from Marine Corps officer, attorney, yoga instructor. What inspired you to focus on the legal career that you do so well in protecting seniors?
My first real exposure to the difficulties of the aging and death process was with my grandfather. He had dementia. I think it was Alzheimer's. I don't know that we ever got a real diagnosis, but it was a long time ago. And I happened to be in law school when he was kind of going through the end stages of his disease. And my mom was unavailable. So I was contacted. It was the old day before cell phones. So they needed me to come and be with him because he had been admitted to the ER. And it was really horrible. He was restrained and he was agitated, and the treatment that he received during that terrible situation was like life-changing for me. And one of the things that I promised was that, if there was anything I could do to try and help make those situations better, not just for the patient, but also for the family, what can we do to really improve situations like that? And let me just say that healthcare has come a long way. A lot of those things that I saw then, we don't do anymore, thank goodness. Right. But also, the financial side, my grandparents really struggled at the end of their lives. They had saved a lot of money, and so much of it went to their healthcare, like in the last 10 years of life. They just really struggled. And, all those things kind of came together for me to create this idea that maybe I could do better. That was number one, that process with my grandfather. The second thing that happened as a young lawyer is that I came across a client who came to me, and she had lost all of her life savings. And it was, $115,000. But to her, her name was Miss Maddie. We're not going to use her real name, but she came to me and was just bereft. She was 92 years old, and her husband had died. And at his funeral, unfortunately, the pastor came and said, "Why don't you add me to your joint account, and I will help you manage your finances." And then he took all the money out of that account and put it in an account with his own wife. And so that process of litigating that issue went on for about 2 years. And she was an older lady and suffered herself from some dementia issues. So it was very traumatizing for her and for her daughter, who kind of helped through the process. And in the end, we ended up getting about half the money back. And
thank God.
Yeah, and then she died shortly after that. And I'm very convinced that the litigation itself was one of the reasons that she had, she was pretty healthy at the beginning of the litigation, but after 2 years of depositions and discovery and these things, it was really, really hard for her. So, that was a long time ago, and I had opportunities as an attorney in the elder law section of the Florida bar and some leadership roles to really look at what the laws of the state of Florida were and to help change them. So, I love to call the exploitation statute from 2012 Miss Maddie's Law, because we addressed the issue of joint account theft, and we addressed a lot of other issues of exploitation, and we changed the way that we have to prove those cases criminally. And it started in 2012 with those changes to the statute. So yeah, these are kind of the things that it's like it gets to you, Carlene. It's like it's happening and you go, this is not acceptable.
Yes.
This is not how we take care of people. So, that's really been my life goals. Now I really focus on helping people through that end stage of life, make sure that they have a good death event, and also try and help people find a way to that finish line with happiness. So we always talk about
I love that.
Yeah, we're like thrive, die. Like, have a happy, thriving life, engaged in your community. What are the things that make you happy for the longest period of time? And then how do we have a death event that's with as little suffering as possible? So yeah, and surrounded by your family or whatever it is that looks like a good death for you, and so we try and honor that and make sure that that's the experience that people have. But that has really become my goals at this point in my career, really to help people at the end of life.
This video is brought to you by the Florida Assisted Living and Caregivers Conference. It is an annual conference for all those who want to open an assisted living right here in Florida. We bring you all of the who's that will help you achieve your ALF. We have caregivers, we have people that already have their assisted living up and running, and they are here for resources. We have caregivers caring for mom and dad at home, but lack resources, so they show up for more resources. We have investors that are in the room looking for partnerships because they don't necessarily want to manage, but they are looking for someone to do the day-to-day while they can do the other investments. We also bring to you all of the sub-industries, those providers that help you get your ALF up and running, the providers that will come to your ALF to provide services to your seniors. We bring everyone in the room for the first time. This event normally sells out. Click the link in the description and I will see you in the room. That is so beautiful. I have had the opportunities of, because I also had an assisted living where I was in the day-to-day. And so I had the opportunity to be front and center where you can ask for advice and you get it. And you see that nurturing, loving side where you play a small role of making them feel safe and letting them know that they are heard. And to see the joy in their faces is just priceless. And then I've also experienced the end of life process as well. And to see the family members going through, because sometimes we think it's just taking care of that senior person that need us, but then we can overlook the family members. And it's empowering to see that you also think about the family members. And you mentioned that you focus more on the end of life. How do you couple your experiences plus your yoga knowledge to help a senior and their family members
Yeah.
feel that they are being heard?
Yeah, it's critical. It's critical to really find the space for people to feel safe and to express what their wishes are. Because what we find is, especially when we have a couple coming in to our firm, we do a program, it's called Life Care Planning. And so the couple may come in and the wife has been spending the last few years taking care of the husband. Sometimes it's reversed. I mean, the typical scenario is that the wife is taking care of the husband and that has become her life. So, she's not sleeping right. She's not doing self-care. And then, we're getting to that stage where he's going to be leaving us and she has done no pre-grief process at all. So when he dies, she finds herself lost and unable to find her footing again. And we know there's over a 50% increase in death of a long-term spouse that survives in that first year after we lose that long-term spouse. So, we focus, yes, we're focusing on making sure that that patient, the person who's going through that chronic illness or cancer or whatever it is, that they have a good death experience. But we're also focused on making sure that the spouse who's left behind will continue to thrive and live also. What can we do to kind of get them situated, thinking about what will life be like for me? What other things can I bring into my life that are going to bring me joy so that when my husband leaves me, there will still be a life for me. And so, yeah, we focus a lot on the family. Children often end up in those primary caregiving roles as well. And it can be the same thing where all of a sudden we have this person who's literally not trained as a caregiver. They're spending 24/7 providing that caregiving service. I mean, even if they're in assisted living, family wants to be there. They want to make sure that their food is correct. They want to make sure that they're getting good care. And so they kind of set aside their own lives to be present during this very important time. And it can be a house of cards where we see, this sandwich generation who's got their own children, but they're taking care of their parents or their grandparents in many situations. And, we're really seeing so much stress and anxiety, and that mindfulness practice, that intentional setting aside just 5 minutes a day to, whatever it is that makes you happy. Is it getting your face in the sun? Is it cold plunging? Is it going in the sauna? Is it, playing Barbies with your grandkids? What is it that brings you joy that's going to create that tether or that grounding so that you can get through the chaos that is the life of a caregiver with someone who has a chronic illness? And, we really have to focus more on strengthening that caregiver, the anchor that's going to keep them going, because it is really critical. So we do a lot of that. In that first meeting that we have with potential clients, we talk about, what is it that we can do to make sure that we're not just focused on when is the next medication necessary, but we're also focused on what brings our person happiness. We have a client right now, and he is a cat person. And when right? So when he moved into the assisted living, they don't allow cats. And so what we did is we found a way to get him to the cat cafe.
Oh, sweet.
You know, so he gets his cat exposure and he loves it. He gets dressed up, he's like ready to go, you know, he's gonna spend his cat time, he has his favorites at the cat cafe. I mean, but those are the things, you know, it's like we don't have to fit one mold, you know, we can figure out like you love kites, okay, what can we do to bring you to a kite festival, or you know, whatever it is, you know, what can we do to create more joy in people's lives in this stage of life just as much as any other. And then how can we also provide that anchor for care providers at this stage?
I love that. I love that. I've definitely come across where one spouse passes away and then the other is just right around the corner. And the children, they're stuck in between because they're still grieving one parent. And now the other parent is on their way. And you're watching it and it's just so heartbreaking to see sometimes even the grandchildren. They're asking for what happened to grandpa. And now grandma has passed away. Yeah.
Those children have their own grief, you know? So, you know, mom may feel like a burden sharing her grief with the children because they have their own grief. They lost their parent. So, you know, we really believe in grief counseling, especially when we're dealing with, you know, just this person going to hospice and having like a little community of people who are going through the same experience. Sometimes we even send clients before the death event because we want them to get a community together where they hear like, this is how it happened for me, so that they can be prepared and have some expectations of what it will look like. And we have found that those kinds of support groups can be very helpful and they can become the anchor. That's the people that you go to lunch with. And so grief support groups can become a really good, just a great network, and you can always find them through hospice. So it's a great tool that we like to use.
Hospice plays a major role in the grieving process, even with helping the senior be comfortable as they transition. It's amazing to see that you also work with hospice and collaborate with them. What are some ways that you work with them to?
Well, we try and bring them in early. You know, we like palliative. We've been trained not to say palliative hospice. We say palliative care. Because it really is available, you know, 2 years before we're seeing that death event. So having another set of eyes to help communicate, you know, coordinate that care, make sure that person isn't suffering unnecessarily. And also just another voice to say, like, this is what is happening right now. So palliative, that nurse practitioner can really give good insight. So like, this is why we're doing this is why we're doing this. And they just kind of create an overlying coordination of care. So I love palliative care. But then for that end of life, that last 6 months of life, we like to bring hospice in early. We really like to have volunteers who, if they're available, who can come and sit with our person when maybe if they're kind of a solo senior in particular, you know, but we also love is being able to transition our person at the very end of life to a hospice house before they die. And the reason that we like to do that is because they get such a higher level of care. We know if they're in the nursing home or they're in an assisted living, you know, that you have limitations on staff and how much time you can spend with someone. When we're really in that end part of life, that last 7 to 10 days, it's important to have really, really high level of care at that time. And we find that moving someone to a hospice house can be very effective to get them through the end part without a lot of suffering and still with the attention that they deserve and need at that stage.
I love that. I've actually never heard of the hospice house aspect of things. I've come across hospice through either going to the family member's home, caring for them there, or coming to the ALF and making
Yeah.
sure that they're overseeing the entire care. But I've never heard of the concept of a hospice house. Can you educate me a little bit? Can you tell me
Sure.
a little bit?
Yeah. So they're all over. We have one in Gainesville. So I'm in Gainesville, Florida. So it's Haven Hospice, and they have a second
Mm.
hospice house in Chiefland. Both are amazing. What I love about the hospice house rooms is outside every single room is a bird feeder. And there's windows in every single room, and the windows are always open, and the birds are feeding at the feeder.
Wow.
It's magical, and you feel the energy. You would totally understand this energy that's very peaceful. And I'm not going to go into too many stories, but I will tell this one brief story. I was appointed the
We
guardian.
love stories. It's okay.
Well, I was appointed the guardian for William. We'll call him William. William was a developmentally disabled adult who was being cared for by his mom, who had schizophrenia, and she decided she was going to try and suffocate him with a pillow. And
God.
she was mentally ill, but he suffered tremendous brain injury during that event. So the judge appointed me to be his guardian, and he had a lot of medical issues. And so he was really at the end of his life, and he was septic and septic and septic and septic, and he got down to like 72 pounds. And, I made the decision that this was not, it was just a life of suffering. So we went ahead and stopped treating him. And we went to Haven House at the end where, he just wasn't responding to the antibiotics. He had terrible bed sores. He was in a lot of suffering. So when we got him there to Haven, here we go. And he was there for about 4 days, and I kept visiting him. And every time I would visit, there on the bird feeder were all these birds. It's so crazy. There were so many birds. There was cardinals, there was, mockingbirds, like all these birds at the feeder, right? So the last day that I was there, the nurse came in and she said, "Shannon, I think it's time to turn the oxygen off." So we turned the oxygen off, and we sat there with him, and his little energy was there. And then I turned and I looked, and all the birds on that feeder, they flew away. Like they were taking his little spirit. And yeah, it's a beautiful place. Oh my goodness.
I get chills.
But it was so beautiful. And he had been so trapped in this body that didn't work, and he was in so much suffering. And like you just felt his little like heart lift, and it was like freedom.
Wow, he's free.
And I see those birds fly away, and I was just like, that is what I was asking you to do for him this whole time. He's like struggling and just, and it was like, yeah, there you go. So, sometimes these places create the ability for us to kind of peacefully transition to whatever comes next. And everybody has their own ideas of what that is. And like, we don't know. So we help whatever it is that you want to feel. That's what we're going to create for you, whether it's a ritual that's Buddhist, or if you're Catholic and you want last rites, or if you're, whatever it is that you want at that time in your life. We're sometimes using end of life doulas to help with that transition process, who are amazing humans. If you have ever experienced a death event with a doula, it is unique in the way that they can kind of help people transition and give them peace and the ability to really move on to whatever comes next in such a positive way. It can be quite powerful.
It is. It really is. I was introduced to end of life doulas. We actually had one at the conference last conference.
Oh God,
yeah.
That.
And it's so powerful, the type of work that they do. And thank you for what you do. And you do it with such heart. I can literally feel the energy, and I get chills, and you can't fake that kind of stuff. I like to talk to my audience about having the right paperwork in place. And I want to cover exploitation as well, and how we can protect our seniors. But while we're on the topic of caring more so for the soul.
Yeah.
I like to educate my audience about having the right paperwork in place. And you mentioned you were a guardian for William. That's what we're gonna call William. And he was lucky to have you, I'm pretty sure. What was that process like, and what led you to become the guardian for him?
Yeah. Yeah. So his mother had tried to suffocate him, and so her parental rights were terminated.
Wow.
And this judge, I'll let him be nameless, but he just signed the orders appointing me. So yeah, so William was really unable to make decisions for himself. So he was nonverbal and very. He had a lot of incapacity. He could express pain when he was in pain. He could do that, but it was clear that he could not make medical decisions for himself. So I got appointed to do that for him. But that can happen in a regular case where we have a situation where someone, has an event like a stroke, or, they're in a dementia process and they no longer have the ability to make decisions about, where they live, or financial decisions, and honestly, I always like to forewarn people, 80% of people who are 70 years old today will become unable to manage their finances before they die.
Wow.
So
That's a huge number.
yeah. So if you haven't done that pre-planning for your medical decision making and your financial decision making, then you could find yourself in a guardianship. And guardianships are expensive. A court supervises every decision that the guardian makes. So, it can be a very challenging process. Guardianship itself is, it takes a long time. And then to get the court to approve things, like, for example, in guardianship, you would have to have the court approve a do not resuscitate order being put in place. So if you are at the end of your life and you're in the intensive care unit and they're saying it's time to withdraw artificial hydration and nutrition, we really want to let this person not suffer anymore, you would have to get a court order to really allow for that end of life decision making. That if you have done pre-planning, you can use advanced directives such as a living will that would address those three conditions. If I'm in a persistent vegetative state, I'm in an end stage condition, or if I'm in a terminal condition, then I can write down my wishes and tell people that I want to basically not prolong my life artificially. So if hydration, nutrition, being intubated, if those things are really just prolonging your death event, then you should be allowed to die naturally, which might mean withdrawing artificial hydration, nutrition, or, if you have, a ventilator, being able for your person who you've designated to make medical decisions for you, for them to be able to take those steps. You need to have a living will. If your heart stops and you don't have a do not resuscitate order, then by law in Florida, they are going to resuscitate you. And if you've been through any kind of resuscitation for someone over the age of 70, it doesn't work. You crack a rib that punctures the lung and you die an excruciating death. And if that DNR is not in place, it can mean that you get resuscitated again and again and again, only to continue to have your heart stop. We had a situation where we were waiting for a judge to enter an order for the do not resuscitate order, and this person was resuscitated 17 times.
Oh.
Right? Like, no, that is not, we don't do that to animals. So, and I think some of the fear of death that we have is related to, extensive suffering. I mean, that is what we're trying to avoid at the end of life. It may be, and if you haven't been around a deathbed, and I know you have, but for our listeners out there is this peace that happens when someone passes. It is profoundly, it's not fear. Like, someone doesn't die and then you feel this fearful, oh no, what have I gotten myself into? No, it's like, oh.
Yes, that is true.
So, right? It's the hard part is getting to that point. It's like we keep people alive artificially, and they're in suffering, and it's not necessary. So a do not resuscitate order when you're of advanced age and you have, if you have osteoporosis or your bones are not great, having those chest compressions can really be painful. If you puncture a lung and end up, being resuscitated, it can still mean a death event through a different way. And it's just not good. Like, why are we doing that? A natural death would mean that you're just simply not resuscitated. And then, your organs shut down and you're gone. We can do better. And one of the ways to do that is by doing these two advanced directives. One is the living will, and the second one is a designation of healthcare surrogate. So designating the person who you'd want to make medical decisions to. And, if you don't do that, we have this statute. It's called the medical proxy statute. And it has a hierarchy of who comes next in the decision-making process. I don't recommend that because you may not like the person who gets appointed to make medical decisions for you. Pick your own person and then pick a backup for that person if they can't be reached. Because you want people making decisions for you that will do the decisions that you want, not the decisions they want. So, I always say to spouses, are you sure you can do what he wants, or are you sure you can do what she wants in making that decision, not what you want? Because spouses tend to keep each other alive, and the worst decision makers, in my experience, are parents making decisions for children.
I can attest to that.
Right? They will keep that child alive. And I'm
Forever.
like, I don't think she wanted that. But, that's the decision maker. So be careful who you pick. Make sure that they do what you want, not what they want. So, yeah, but those are really important documents. And do not resuscitate orders. Those are documents that you can't draft yourself. You have to talk to your doctor about it. And it comes on an official yellow page. And, you can even cut off the bottom of the pages and laminate it and put it on your wrist. So, but I've never seen anyone do that, but the statute does require that piece of paper with that little extra thing at the bottom. But yeah, do not resuscitate orders can be really helpful if you're, at the end of life and you don't want to go through that kind of painful suffering event. But if they don't have that handy, then they will resuscitate you. And sometimes it's not great, not a great experience.
Yeah, it really isn't a great experience. Because imagine, you're already frail, your strength is very limited, and then you don't feel good. You probably are already in a lot of pain, and now you're getting your lungs just kind of like, it's a rough process. And if that's what you want, to be alive, that's great, to be resuscitated. But if you don't want to be alive, it is the worst thing, because now you're suffering, and now you have all this thing going on, and all it takes is
brain damage, because sometimes that oxygen is not getting to your brain. So what we often see is the person who comes back is not the person. So, that's one aspect of it as well, is that lack of oxygen in your brain for, a few minutes can be enough to really set you back cognitively.
Wow. So yes, you heard from Attorney Shannon. Get your paperwork in order, okay? Please get your paperwork in order. Let's talk about exploitation. I know part of your passion is to protect seniors. Can you tell us a little bit about your work in protecting seniors?
So we have created mechanisms for stopping exploitation in the state of Florida quickly, without, having to do that 2 years of civil litigation, by using this tool called the exploitation injunction statute. There's no filing fee. You don't have to have an attorney to file this. But if exploitation is happening, and like we have a case right now that we're getting ready to file, I won't get into too many details, but it involved a family member who came into town and took our little man, I'm going to call him a little man because he is little, took him and got a new power of attorney, had him sign deeds over, emptied out his bank account, and then went back to Orlando where, he is, this family member, it's a distant family member even, And that's sufficient for us to file that exploitation injunction statute. So, you can't do this in Florida anymore. You can't decide that, this person is capable of giving you gifts, because I'm sure that'll be the defense in this case, is that, this person is just giving me their money, and that's what the law used to be. It's like the caregiver comes in, they get the person that they're taking care of to sign over all their property and to sign over all their resources and to make them the pay on death beneficiary of bank accounts. And it used to be very challenging for us to contest those cases. Not anymore. If you are vulnerable, meaning you can't do some of your activities or daily living, or you lack the ability to really protect yourself because of your aging process or some cognitive decline that you have, and someone then adds themselves to a joint account and withdraws the money, or they're a family member and they get you to sign things over, them saying that you gifted this to them is not a defense. So that is not a defense. And what I love to do, and this is the lawyer in me, is I get them into that, right? I get them into that hearing. And because this is a crime in Florida, but we proceed civilly with the exploitation injunction statute, but I will typically get that respondent in the hearing and I will ask them, hey, what happened? And I say, but before you answer, realize this is potentially a criminal charge can come down, and you have the right to remain silent, and anything can be used against you in a criminal case. And the judge gives that instruction. They don't care. They want to get up on the stand and tell us how this was a gift, how their cousin has known them a long time, and he always said he wanted to give him all his money, and yada, yada, yada. So then they basically admit to the crime. And it's all recorded. So we're able to kind of stop this problem with the civil court very quickly. These exploitation injunctions are usually entered within 24 hours. So the judge enters an order that prevents the exploiter from having contact with our victim. Then there's a hearing about 10 days later where everybody can come in and tell their story. And then the judge does a ruling and it's all recorded. And I take all of that information and I walk over to the state attorney's office and I say, please prosecute this predatory person, because you can always bet that that person, this isn't the first victim that they have. And in that case that I was just talking about, it isn't. He's done this to 2 other people.
Oh.
It would come a long way. We have these tools now, including the exploitation injunction. And we also have a new provision of the injunction statute that allows us to stop scammers. So if someone is very vulnerable and they're giving all their money away to a scammer, we now have the ability to freeze that victim's account until we can get a guardianship in place to protect their money, even if we don't know who the scammer is. So we used to have to serve the scammer. We used to have to find them and give them service of process. We don't have to do that anymore. We can actually serve them through the same means that they're communicating with our victim. So if they're on Millionaire Match or they're communicating through text or whatever it is, we just give them the notice through the text and then we can still freeze the assets. So we've come a long way. We've done a lot of good work in creating tools, but you have to know about the tools, and making that report to Adult Protective Services is really important. And for, our people that are out there running assisted livings, and we get a lot of calls from people like, I think someone's coming in and exploiting our person here. Our resident is being exploited. This person that they met at bingo is now coming over and we've watched them give them cash. Report it because it's a crime. And, people always say, well, am I a mandatory reporter? Yes.
We all are.
Yes.
That's what if you feel you should report, then you should report.
Yes. And frankly, there's been an argument that everyone is a mandatory reporter. So, I just tell people, if you see it, just report it.
Yes. And you're protecting someone who's not able to fend for themselves. It's like, just report it. Just report it.
And honestly, even if you're like, well, it's a scam, it's just a scam, they're being scammed, that's okay too, because now we have this tool in the exploitation injunction statute, And what we're finding is that now that we have this tool, this actually only became implemented in July of this year. We're finding that law enforcement and these senior service provisions, like they have one in Marion County, it's amazing. It's like they have these legal aid attorneys who are helping people stop these scams. So they're freezing the assets and then they're getting a guardianship in place to stop these scammers. So even if you're like, well, what are we going to do? It's just a scam. We don't even know who the person is that's scamming them. Still report it, because Adult Protective Services can take steps then to get that exploitation injunction statute filed so that their assets get frozen, and then a guardianship can be put in place, even if it's through a legal aid attorney. So even if we're talking about a low-income person, who may not have a ton of resources, or they're on Medicaid, and they've only got a little bit of money that they're working with, it's still important to report these things, because there may be a way for us to protect that person, even from that lower level scam.
I love that. And thank you for your work in that, because it hurts when you want to help and you're not able to. And it really empower others who want to help our seniors to make that phone call to DCF and get them the help that they deserve. And you've done a lot of work in that area. And I just want to commend you for that.
Thank you. And I want to say just a couple other little things about this, because one of the things that I think is so important for people to know is the dark web has all our information, right? Everybody's information is on the dark web. The question is, how valuable is your information? If you've been scammed, then your information is more valuable. They can sell it to some bigger fish who then is going to target you more, right? So the way to keep your information low value, and your parents' information and your grandparents' information and the residents in your facility's information less valuable, don't pick up the phone. Don't pick up the phone. When you see that phone number coming through, and there's this trick, it's called spoofing, where they can make a phone number look like a local number. If you don't know who that person is that's on the other end of the line, do not pick it up. Or you can text that person back and say, hey, Johnny, the lawyer or the police department, can you text me back? Because spoofing is not text accessible. So they won't respond if you respond with a text. But also have them leave a message on your voicemail. You can call them back if they're legit. But when you pick up the phone and they keep you on the phone for a certain time period, your information goes up on the dark web. Why? Because they're trying to find out what your currency is. So they're trying to find out, are you a widow who lost a longtime partner, so we're going to put together a romance scam for you?
Wow.
We had a client, he was a venture capitalist. He kept talking to people on the end of the phone. They targeted him with this project. It's an app. It was in Africa. And they got him to give them $10 million over 3 months. 3 months. So what they're trying to do when they're talking to you is find out what makes you tick. What scam can they craft together? They will put boots on the ground. This is a $65 billion a year industry. They will craft a scam. They have people everywhere. It's organized crime. So they will get boots on the ground. We had a lady at a local facility was going to get in the car with the guy who knocked on her door in a facility. This was in a facility. He was taking her to the bank because she had won $19 million from Publishers Clearinghouse. And he was going to take her to the bank to pay the taxes, which are only $12,000. And if she paid the taxes that day, she'd win $25 million. Luckily, her neighbor intervened and stopped her from getting in the car with this person. But this is the level of sophistication and strategic targeting of people who are vulnerable. The average number of times that someone gets scammed is 7 times. Wow. The average amount of money given away, $52,500. So we're talking about big dollar amounts. And some people don't have that to lose. that where are they going to get the money to feed themselves? How are they going to pay their assisted living bill if they've given all the money away to this exploiter who told them they didn't show up for jury duty, right? Don't answer the phone. Just don't answer the phone. It's unfortunately, that's really how most of these scams are taking place. It's either through the phone or through email. And so don't click the link, don't pick up the phone unless you know who the person is.
Okay, you heard that, right? Just don't do it. Simple, just simply said, just don't do it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know you mentioned Medicaid as well. You've done some work in Medicaid. What are some works that you've done in Medicaid and how you've helped our seniors?
Yeah, and I just want to, like, the main things that are important for people to know, and these are myths floating around. You talk to your friend at the coffee shop and they tell you, oh no, Medicaid's going to take your home. No, they're not. You can have a homestead. You can be in an assisted living and still have a home. And if you have any intent to return to that home, and what we do is we file this thing, it's called Notice of Intent to Return to the Homestead. And that protects the homestead. You don't have to sell it. You don't have to liquidate it. You don't have to get a reverse mortgage on it. That homestead remains a protected asset and you can still qualify for Medicaid. In addition, spouses have a lot of options. So, spouses in the community can keep up to $154,000 in assets. The person who's applying for Medicaid can only have $2,000 in assets. So typically what we'll do is shift assets to the wealth spouse. And then there's some strategies that we can also use. That one of them is called rental income producing property. So that means we could actually purchase property that provides rental income. The income goes to Medicaid while our people are living, but when they die, it can pass on to their named beneficiaries by using an enhanced life estate deed. You can shelter a lot of money and still qualify for Medicaid. The other myth that I love to bust is retirement assets do not have to be liquidated. So if I have $100,000 in a retirement account and I'm only taking required minimum distributions, we're going to tell you you've got to start taking those RMDs on a monthly basis because Medicaid will count the RMDs as income. But when you die, it can pass your designated beneficiaries. Now, the caveat to retirement assets is that if you've withdrawn money early from that retirement account, so if you took more than required minimum distributions, then you would have to liquidate that particular retirement account. So you don't take required minimum distributions, use other resources to pay for things because that is an exempt asset for Medicaid qualification. So those are the big things. Yeah, and we can also use something called personal services contracts to reduce assets down to that $2,000. And I don't need to go too much into that, what that entails, but basically, if you have somebody in the community who's providing services to you, you can pay them in a lump sum of money in order to get qualified for Medicaid. So let's just say I had $100,000 in my account. I'm ready to qualify for Medicaid. And my son comes and visits me every day and brings me groceries and does all these things in the assisted living facility. We can use the personal services contract, fund $100,000 into that personal services contract because he's coming there every day. He's spending 20 hours a week providing services. And in exchange, it's compensation to him. So he still has to declare it as compensation on his taxes, but then we can immediately qualify our person for services. So yeah, there's a lot of tools that are available for Medicaid qualification in Florida, especially if you're talking about spouses. There's some other techniques I haven't really talked about, but please talk to an attorney before you decide to listen to the person at the coffee shop who tells you what are the exempt assets and what are I can't ever qualify for Medicaid. My income's too high. No, you should talk to someone who actually knows, like an elder law attorney, to find out, whether or not there are other strategies or techniques you can use to qualify for Medicaid.
Wow. All I'm going to say about this is wow. I've learned so much. And do yourself a favor. Reach out to attorney Shannon, schedule a call, Find out, because clearly there's so much. We're just peeling off this onion, okay? And we're barely off the second layer. That's just what I'm saying. So now it is your part to reach out to her, schedule a phone call, and find out what else you need to do. If you're a caregiver, you're someone with an ALF, you're someone who care for mom and dad at home, or you yourself is the senior person who needs the resources, please reach out to her. I mean, this is why I bring the resources, because I want you to thrive regardless of where you are in life. You deserve it. How can they find you, Miss Shannon?
So you can reach out to the Miller Elder Law Firm. You can Google us. We're in Gainesville. But also, I wanted to say, like, elder law attorneys across the state do the same things that I do. So if you are not in the Gainesville area and you're like, wait, I'm in Tallahassee or I'm in Palm Coast or wherever it is that you are, look at the elder law section of the Florida Bar's website. You can also look at AFELA.org, the Academy of Florida Elder Law Attorneys, and look for a local attorney who's an elder law attorney near you, because elder law attorneys do exactly what I'm talking about, which is we help people get qualified for Medicaid. We do estate planning, we do probate, we do guardianship. We also, many of us are doing this life care planning model as well. So we can be great resources to you with regard to all these things that happen to us as we're aging, as well as the exploitation issues that may come up.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much for being here with us, for spending this time with us. And consider to like, subscribe, reach out to Miss Shannon, let her know what was your big aha moment. Until next time, I will see you in the next one. Talk soon. This video is brought to you by the Florida Assisted Living and Caregivers Conference. It is an annual conference for all those who want to open an assisted living right here in Florida. We bring you all of the who's that will help you achieve your ALF. We have caregivers, we have people that already have their assisted living up and running, and they are here for resources. We have caregivers caring for mom and dad at home, but lack resources, so they show up for more resources. We have investors that are in the room looking for partnerships because they don't necessarily want to manage, but they are looking for someone to do the day-to-day while they can do the other investments. We also bring to you all of the sub-industries, those providers that help you get your ALF up and running, the providers that will come to your ALF to provide services to your seniors. We bring everyone in the room for the first time. This event normally sells out. Click the link in the description and I will see you in the room.